The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.
Tishaura Jones is no stranger to citywide races. She's in her third term as St. Louis treasurer, and 2021 marks her second race for mayor. If elected, Jones plans to use her post as the chief executive of her hometown to fight for its reputation at the regional, state, and national levels. She joins me next on Politically Speaking to discuss developing a strategic plan for the city, breaking down the silos in government, and having the hard conversations about race. Let's hit the music.
This is the Politically Speaking podcast, the definitive show about Missouri politics.
It's a little complicated in Bolivar because there is a Parsons family there.
But we also knew that it was important to make sure that we got to where we needed to go.
You know, if you walk in a room and you're getting ready to make a decision and everybody in the room looks like you need to stop.
And right now what happens in the United States Senate is as critical as anywhere else in the country.
I really want the state to succeed.
Well, we want everybody to know that we're all working together.
I just worked hard to try to build my name where I didn't have the money.
And welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm your host, Rachel Lippmann. Joining me on the podcast today is
Tishaura Jones, treasurer of the city of St. Louis.
And in addition to being the treasurer, Tishaura is one of the 4 candidates running for mayor of St. Louis. We will be recording Politically Speaking episodes with all of them. You can actually find our conversation with Kara Spencer on our website, stlpublicradio.org. The others will be following shortly. And Tishaura, as you mentioned, you are already treasurer of the city of St. Louis. What more is it that you believe you can do for the city as mayor?
Well, as treasurer, I've been able to take a platform and actually implement it. It's one thing to have a vision, but it's in a platform. The other is it's a totally different thing to actually implement that platform. And I've been able to do that as treasurer for the last 8 years. And so I'm the only candidate in this race that has that experience, that also has the experience, the management experience of leading a staff of hundreds of people and the relationships on the state and national levels to put St. Louis back on the map. And I think that's something we so desperately need. Our reputation has suffered in recent years, and it's time to change the narrative back to the St. Louis that we all know and love, the St. Louis that I grew up in, and the St. Louis that we know we can be.
And just what is it about the mayor's office that you think enables you to, as you mentioned, sort of change the narrative around the city of St. Louis, those opportunities that aren't available to you as treasurer?
So as the chief executive for the city, I'll be able to work with other city departments to work on the national level with our partners in federal government to secure resources, grant funds, and help people and help our departments be the best that they can be. St. Louis needs a champion and a fighter on the national level, and I will be that mayor.
Tishaura, you announced your second run for mayor about 2 weeks before Lyda Crewson announced that she would not seek a second term. How different is this race now without an incumbent running, and who do you think benefits the most from that change in circumstances?
It's definitely a different race without the incumbent running, because all of the candidates will probably start from the same place. And without the incumbent also in the race, that's another $600,000 that the mayor had in her campaign account that doesn't get spent in this race. And then also it allows our citizens, because the election has changed, it allows them choices this time around to choose all the candidates they like in the first round.
And who do you think that ends up benefiting the most, just sort of the change dynamics of the race and who is in it?
I think it benefits people with the most name recognition in this, in my opinion. And we all know that those 2 candidates are myself and Lewis Reed.
You alluded to this a little bit in your previous answer, and that is Proposition D has changed the way that this election is going to happen. So voters can select as many individuals as they want in the March primary, and you're all running nonpartisan. And then the top two will advance to the April general election. How do you think this benefits you in terms of, making it so that you have a chance at being mayor, or how does this benefit just kind of the city in general?
I think it benefits the city because it gives our voters choice and a greater opportunity to participate in their democracy. When you have multiple candidates in a race, a lot of times people like more than one candidate. And this time around, if they like more than one candidate, they in the first round they can vote for more than one candidate. And we've seen this kind of change. It's not just unique to St. Louis. We've seen this kind of change in a somewhat similar form in ranked choice voting in other cities across the country, like St. Paul and Minneapolis, Minnesota, San Francisco, and now New York City is going to ranked choice voting. And I think that gives people a greater opportunity to participate in their democracy and gives them choices.
And I know the intention is that it basically means that you have to have a broad base of support throughout the city of St. Louis in order to get elected. Is that something that you think kind of benefits you, or how does that benefit you in terms of your, campaigning style, or how you would plan to govern or campaign?
Well, I have always enjoyed a broad base of support. If you look at any of my past campaigns for treasurer and my past campaign for mayor, this is a multiracial, multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi any identity you hold coalition. And we have been very welcoming and opening and inclusive to anyone who feels that St. Louis is that we need a mayor that's ready to tackle the 21st century. And so obviously it's like we said before, it's going to benefit the person who's able to pull together that sort of diverse coalition and also has a good name recognition and a good reputation in the community for actually delivering on her promises.
What is, do you believe, the number one issue facing the city of St. Louis today?
I believe the number one issue facing St. Louis today is our reputation as being the most violent city in America, the most racist city in America, and a city in America that has a whole host of its citizens living in poverty. And until we have to do the things that are going to reverse or change the narrative about how people think about St. Louis in order for them to want to come here, to invest here, to live here and grow here.
Let's tackle that first thing you mentioned, which was the plan to address violent crime. What's going to be the way that you tackle that issue? Because it isn't just a reputation. The city of St. Louis does have an issue with violent crime. 262 homicides last year is not a good number.
No, it's not. And my heart breaks every time I see another story about someone losing their life to gun violence. We have to declare that gun violence is a public health crisis in the city of St. Louis and address it accordingly. That means including our flagship university hospitals, bringing them to the table. That means a community first public safety approach. Bringing all tools to the table, not just cure violence, or not just focus deterrence, or not just whatever programs that are available. It's going to take all of us at the table, because crime doesn't just stop at the Mississippi River or Skinker Boulevard. So we need to bring our neighbors to the east and to the west to the table as well, and develop a regional approach to solving crime as a region, not just St. Louis City.
What do you mean by a community first public safety approach? What is the community in here? Where's the focus on that?
Well, the community is unifying police, social service workers, prosecutors, faith organizations, local businesses, and anybody else to combat violent crime. When you look at other cities across this country that have seen market decreases in violent crime, everybody is at the table, and no voice is outweighs others. This is one of those things where we need all hands on deck. And there are a lot of organizations that are doing some great work, but they're doing it in silos. And so we need to bring all of those resources to the table. In my opinion, the mayor can be a convener of sorts, to put everybody at the table and then develop a plan or a strategy that works well for us using all of the tools that we know currently exist.
So, what voice do you think is missing the most from the conversation right now? And what voice do you think is getting maybe too much or an uneven amount of attention in this conversation right now?
I think that, like I said, a lot of people are doing work, doing great jobs in their respective corners, right? So we have the Urban League doing some great work. We have Better Family Life doing great work. We've got Cure Violence. We've got Focus Deterrence. We've got, the unions trying to get people employed and workforce development agencies. I think we have to bring all of that together. I don't think there's any one voice that's getting more attention than the other, or that anybody's missing. It's just that we're not working all together.
Have you had a chance to review the Teneo Group's report on the city of St. Louis?
I have.
What do you think of it? Do you think you'll implement the suggestions? Was there anything kind of missing in that report?
I was shocked at their revelation of not having a strategy. I thought that the chief is a big data guy, and I thought that he had a strategy at least identified on how to combat violent crime. And I was shocked at the communication, the lack of communication that there is within the department, and the communication with the department in other places. But I also think, on a broader scale, that there's a lack of communication, period, within city government as a whole. And I'm actually looking to change that as well, and have more frequent meetings with our other citywide elected officials, because there are programs and grants that we could be applying for, that all they need sometimes is a letter from the mayor's office saying, yes, I support this program, and yes, they can get that grant. And I look to working with my colleagues, the other 8 citywide elected officials, to get them what they need and then get out of their way.
Do you think the right people are in place right now in public safety leadership to be able to implement a strategy, break down some of those silos, or is it kind of just too soon to tell?
I think it's too soon to tell, but I also believe that that everything has to be on the table as we move forward. We cannot continue to have the same old solutions to address public safety and crime and expect a different output. So everything and everybody is on the table.
The second thing that you mentioned as part of the city's reputation is the issues around poverty in the city. And I'm wondering where you see that sort of manifesting the most. What is the city's kind of biggest issue around poverty? And what would you do as mayor to help work towards that, towards fixing that?
I think our income gap between Black and white families, I think, is how it manifests itself the most. A lot of African Americans don't have access to living wage jobs where they can only work one job and take care of their family. I'm the first citywide elected official to raise minimum wage to $15 an hour. And you should see how that directly changed the lives of several people on my staff, who were making $7.25 when I started as treasurer in 2013. So now, they can stop working that second job. And I've received letters from some people on my staff saying, thank you, because of this, now I don't have to make that choice between feeding my family and paying a bill. And so we need to see what we can do to close the income gap, or the wage gap, and in my opinion, close the wealth gap in home ownership. We still have redlining in the city of St. Louis, where homes north of Delmar are valued or at least 20 to 30% less than the same home if it's located south of Delmar. I mean, we've seen the housing stock, and look, the housing stock in the 13th ward is almost identical to the housing stock in the 2nd ward. And yet, those same homes built the same way, probably the same year, are valued 20 to 30% less in North St. Louis versus that same home in South St. Louis. So we need to find pathways to create generational wealth, as well as to close the racial and the income gap and the wealth gap.
I know obviously you aren't in this office yet, and therefore don't necessarily know kind of everything you would have available to you to tackle this, but where do you think the mayor can, use his or her power, his or her leverage to address some of those in, what you mentioned, wealth gap, redlining, et cetera?
There are already some programs that are working, that actually they're starting to try to work here and are working across the country to address the especially the wealth gap in home ownership, with the Greenlining Fund, for example, which brings financial institutions and banks to the table to make the loan between the gap that is the appraisal and what the homeowner needs to actually fix up that home or create a better comp within that neighborhood, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when there are no comparable sales within a neighborhood, because there's no development going on in that neighborhood, because there have been no families moving into that neighborhood. So we have to level the playing field and use all the tools with our financial institutions to do so. That's just one idea.
You mentioned in your kickoff speech and plenty of other times that the city is not a poor city, it's a cheap city. Where are the biggest flaws in the city's budgeting process that leads it to be the cheap city and not the poor city?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we see it already with 0.2% of our budget is spent on health and human services. And over 50% of our budget is spent on public safety. And we know that just throwing more cops at a situation isn't going to make us safe, but actually invest in the things that make people safe. When we know that almost 50% of calls can be answered by someone other than police, then we should be investing in um, hiring different types of personnel so we deploy the right type of professional to the right type of call and avoid some of those bad outcomes, like the one where St. Louis has more police involved shootings per capita than any other city in the country. That's because, unfortunately, we don't have the right type of personnel to deploy to the right type of call when someone is having a mental health breakdown, when someone is high on drugs, or when someone is inebriated and needs a sobering center. So how do we invest in the resources that are going to keep people safe in their homes and in their neighborhoods? And how do we address budget priorities to do that?
What's your thought on kind of the mechanics of the city's budget?
I think that's exactly what we do with the city's budget. We nibble around the edges. This is what we did last year, and this is what we should do going forward. Add a little bit here, take away a little bit there, and like I said, everything has to be on the table. So I'm in favor of doing a top to bottom review, a top to bottom audit of our city's processes, what we spend, how much money we bring in. We have to do a detailed analysis of our sources and uses of funds. And when I say sources, that could mean, taxes that we're collecting. Are we really collecting the amount that we should be? If not, why? Or our fee structure. When's the last time the fee structure has been looked at for certain fees that we pay for certain things? Should that be adjusted? And how do we, and then where's that money going? And is the money that we're spending, are we actually getting a return on our investment in different programs and services that we currently pay for?
One of the biggest impacts on the city's budget is obviously going to be the COVID-19 pandemic. You're not getting an entertainment tax, hotel tax, all of that. How would you, it's going to be the first step to try and cushion some of the impact and then, make the city positioned when things are able to rebound?
Yeah, so I think one piece of that equation that's missing is we don't yet know what kind of relief we're going to get from the federal government. And if the first 7 days are any indicator of how the Biden-Harris administration is going to act, I'm hopeful that we'll see a lot more and a lot of new programs and services coming from the federal government designed to give everybody a job with a living wage, to support our unions, to support building infrastructure. We'll need to also staff up for this vaccination push that the administration has recently announced to have everybody vaccinated by the end of the summer. That's going to require a lot of that's going to get a lot of people employed. And then also this $1.9 trillion aid package. I've been a part of a couple of national organizations of elected officials pushing for direct aid to cities with populations less than 500,000, and also have talked to our congresswoman about that as well. So I think that there are some pieces of the equation that we don't yet know. So we'll be able to make a better decision once we have those pieces.
From the public health aspect of the pandemic, as you look at how the city has responded to it, are there things that you would absolutely continue as you came in as mayor? Are there tighter restrictions you would put in, or different ways that you would respond to the pandemic part of the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. We would definitely continue a mask mandate at least until everyone has been vaccinated or until the CDC tells us otherwise. But I would also, I would have had a stronger relationship with St. Louis County. In my opinion, it made no sense that St. Louis City and St. Louis County had different health directives, and that you could eat indoors in St. Louis City, but you couldn't eat indoors in St. Louis County. And that showed, in my opinion, a lack of communication and a lack of coordination. And then we also saw an announcement today from Dr. Sam Page that St. Louis County is about to do a massive sort of vaccination site. That's something that we should be doing on a regional basis and putting all of our collective resources at the table. So it didn't matter whether or not you lived in the city or in the county, you could go anywhere that's closest to you to get a vaccine. And it didn't matter if you lived in the city or in the county.
The pandemic has revealed that there really isn't a true regional strategy for something like a response to a global health emergency or development. Why do you think you would be the best person positioned to truly get a regional response, not just with Dr. Page in St. Louis County, but with Mr. Ellman in St. Charles County and Mr. Gannon in Jefferson County and sort of even the Metro East regions?
I don't know if I'll be able to get a better response, but I do know that I have a master's in health administration with a background in public health and and working in public health for at least 12 years before I came to politics. So, I would have the experience behind me to know exactly what I'm talking about as I approach our different regional leaders. And so all I can do is hope that that they respond to reason. And this sort of argument of personal responsibility is actually killing us, and is making us less safe. And hopefully they'll start to come around.
And we will be right back after this short break. And we're back on Politically Speaking with Treasurer Tishaura Jones. I'm Rachel Lippmann. And earlier in our conversation, Tishaura, you mentioned crime, poverty, and racism as the three things that are really kind of holding back the reputation of St. Louis. How would you, as mayor, try and tackle the issue of racism, which underlines so much else of how the city functions?
So I read some history about St. Louis before I was born, actually, and found that A lot of the things that other cities went through after the death of Dr. Martin Luther King, St. Louis didn't have riots. And so I think that our approach to racism has been one of those things where we try to just sweep it under the rug and not have those direct, uncomfortable conversations about how systemic racism in our region really prohibits or really leaves pulls us behind and prohibits us from being the region that we can be. And so I would look to have maybe a truth and reconciliation, either commission or discussion. We've had some of these discussions sometimes when, the For the Sake of All report was released about health disparities between zip codes. The Ferguson Commission report was centered in race. And both of those reports, in my opinion, sit on a desk and collect dust until we are serious about and intentional about putting racial equity at the center of all of our decisions. Race will be one of those things that continues to hold our region back from being the best it can be.
Give me an example of a policy decision or a policy way that you would center racial equity. I'll toss out development, for example. How would a development strategy have racial equity at its center in a Tishaura Jones administration?
That is actually the first example I was going to give, which was development. We have to be intentional about our investment in economic development and where we use our incentives for economic development. We've seen that over 50% of tax incentives have only been used in 4 wards. And so in my administration, I would be intentional about sending investment into neighborhoods north of Del Mar and also in South St. Louis, where that have seen little to no investment over decades. And so since we haven't invested in those neighborhoods over decades, we cannot be surprised that the population is declining in those neighborhoods, and also that the schools are closing in those neighborhoods. And so I would be intentional about investment, and also putting racial equity at the center of not just development decisions, but every decision that this administration makes.
One of the conversations that has popped up since about 2017 is the potential to lease St. Louis Lambert International Airport. Is there a circumstance under which you could see potentially having a private operator take over, or would this remain truly just a straight city asset in the Tishaura Jones administration?
I don't know. I'm not a fan of privatization. Let me start there. But I am a fan of taking a look at how to monetize and capitalize on the asset that is our St. Louis airport. Our airport is our window to the world, from other where as people visit our city. And we need to make sure that that the airport is being run efficiently and effectively. And I do believe that Rhonda Hamm is doing a great job. But I also think that we could stand to take a look at how to capitalize on that asset. And I'm not. I am not. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm not opposed to looking at all of the possibilities.
Wanted to go back to the issue of race and its impact on the city. Do you think you're the best sort of person equipped to start the difficult conversations about racism that would have to happen to really move the city forward?
I believe that the people closest to the problem are closest to the solution. I was born and raised in St. Louis, and have fond memories of growing up in the city and knowing that it hasn't always been this way. But I also know that I'm unapologetically Black, and put that at the forefront of when I'm sitting at tables and making decisions, and putting that in the middle of every decision that I make. And so I feel that, being a daughter of this city, being a Black daughter of this city, gives me a unique perspective. Also, raising a Black son in this city gives me a unique perspective, to be able to push that conversation, and then let's have that honest conversation about race and how we move forward.
And how do you move the Forsake of All report, the Ferguson Commission report, off of something gathering dust on the shelf to an actual blueprint for the city and the region?
I think that we move it just by picking it up and looking at the recommendations. And I've been able to implement several recommendations from the Ferguson Commission report in my office, the ones that talk about financial literacy and empowerment with the development of the College Kids Children's Savings Account program, with the development of the Office of Financial Empowerment, how we put $2 million towards updating the North-South Metrolink study, just to name a few. And I think I don't think that any of the calls to action in the report are unreasonable. I just think that we need to, lay them out, take a look at them, and see how we can implement them into our everyday decisions. And I think we also couple that with the 2030 report that Greater St. Louis has just released. And then I think, if we put all of those together in a strategic plan for the city and for the region moving forward, I think we'll see those investments of, corporate and philanthropy, because I think they stand ready to invest in St. Louis, but we just don't have a plan. And if we present a plan that's based on the research that's already been done, and move that plan forward, I think that we can start to see a real change in what our region looks like and how it treats its citizens.
The maps that you will either sign off or not sign off on will be taking the Board of Aldermen down to 14 wards, likely. There's a possibility that this issue could get on a later ballot in August and November. But as of right now, those maps are going to be at 14 wards. What are you going to be looking for, either in the redistricting process or in the maps that are presented to you, to ensure that the residents of North St. Louis, South St. Louis, Central Corridor are all receives equal representation and equal political power?
I think process is going to be key to this particular part of our history. I would hope that we get an independent demographer or independent commission to draw the maps. I would hope that the process is open, fair, and transparent. That we spend some time in the community and spend some time with different neighborhoods and different ward organizations, actually mulling over this over several months, and then vote on, and then have the Board of Aldermen vote on it. But I think process is key, and I would want to make sure that it's fair, open, and transparent.
How's your relationship, do you think, going to look with the Board of Aldermen, regardless of whether it's 28 when you would start, or 13 when you would finish up, or 14 when you would finish up?
I think that I'm going to try my hardest to have a good relationship with the board, knowing that they are an integral part of city government. My door will always be open for conversations and communication. I think that we should be working better together to develop plans that affect the entire city, and not just plans for this ward and plans for that ward. I think we need to be moving forward in a more cohesive manner because all of our destinies are linked. What happens in the 27th ward does affect what happens in the 13th ward, and what happens in the 16th affects what happens in the 2nd. So we all have a shared destiny, and I would hope that my communicating with the board in a more frequent manner would lend to more cooperation.
Give the listeners here an elevator pitch. Why are you the best candidate for the job at this moment in St. Louis's history?
Well, again, it's one thing to have a vision and a platform, but it's a whole different thing to turn that vision and platform into a reality. And that's exactly what I've done in the last 8 years in the treasurer's office. I'm the only candidate with the executive experience of turning a vision into a reality, the management experience of leading a staff of hundreds of people, and the relationships on the state and national levels to put St. Louis back on the map.
For all of our stories, you can go to stlpublicradio.org. I'm on Twitter at @rlippmann. That's 2 P's and 2 N's. Tishaura, where can people find you and your mayoral campaign?
They can find us at www.tishaura4mayor.com.
Until next time, so long.
If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.